Hello, I'm the Trek Lad, and this is my review of Star Trek Discovery's 5th season finale, Life Itself. In Discovery's final ever episode, Burnham and Mull find themselves inside a strange extra-dimensional construct with one final puzzle required to unlock the unknown power of the progenitor's tech. Meanwhile, Rayner and the Discovery battle to protect Burnham and the portal from a vengeful Breen armada, Saru races to prevent further Breen reinforcements, and Book sits in a shuttle. A quick heads up, this video contains spoilers, so if you've not yet seen this episode, this might not be the video for you. If you're just looking for my overall thoughts, you can skip to the timestamp shown here on screen. Let's warp into this. The episode wastes no time showing us what lies beyond the blinding whiteness of the portal that Burnham and Mull jumped headfirst into last week. We find Burnham, who has somehow replaced her Breen uniform with a Starfleet one, taking in the strange sights of this extra-dimensional structure. Visually, it's reminiscent of the Tesseract from Christopher Nolan's Interstellar, a similarity the show seems to acknowledge with a short but noticeable cue in Jeff Russo's score. It's a shame that the show never gives us the time to take in the impressive surroundings properly. There are a couple of small moments, but most of what takes place here are a series of poor quality fight scenes that feel like they go on forever, and more of the show's awful cinematography. Camera rotations, flips, orbits, shaky shots, and slow motions. Tools of an unimaginative filmmaker, which are all put to good use here. Using the clue she received a few weeks ago, Burnham solves the final puzzle and finds herself, finally, face to face with the progenitors, who reveal they didn't actually invent the technology, but are merely its guardians, a responsibility that now passes to Burnham. Disappointment that we never get to see the true power of the tech aside, this is an interesting development that I quite like, specifically the idea of a greater power beyond the progenitors, which ties into my strongly held belief that there's nothing more compelling than the unknown. I wasn't expecting this from Discovery, a show that until this point loves nothing more than finding answers to questions no one has asked. I imagine some won't agree, arguing that securing the tech was the reason for the season's existence, but in hindsight, Discovery is a show that is all about the journey rather than the destination. And besides, for a season that riffs wholesale on Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, this is an outcome that we absolutely should have seen coming. It's refreshing to see the show refuse to give us some sort of impossibly happy ending. I was fully prepared to see some sort of epic resurrection. My money was on Mull and Book coming together with some forehead magic, using the tech to restore Quajan, using luck and parts of the tree root in a visual not too different from when Decker and Vija merged at the end of the motion picture. Goes to show how much I know, I guess. Back in regular space, Rayner and the Discovery are duking it out with the surviving Breen. It's your typical run-of-the-mill Discovery space battle with more obnoxious camera movements and rapid fire technobabble doing my headache no favours whatsoever. Of course, we get plenty of rock debris, and the bridge flamethrowers are firing like there's no tomorrow, because I guess there is no tomorrow. In a move we've seen a bunch of times before, perhaps most notably during the Briar Patch battle with the sonar in Insurrection, the Discovery wipes out most of the Breen using torpedoes to ignite a patch of plasma. It's a fun moment that would have been even better if we actually got to see the Breen fighters, blow up. While all this is going on, Book and Culber take a shuttle to prevent the portal from slipping into one of the black holes. Did I mention that was a thing? Sorry, there's a lot going on. Culber completes his spiritual season arc in slightly underwhelming fashion, remembering a crucial bit of information left over from his merging with Janal earlier in the season. I guess that episode was worth sitting through after all. Elsewhere, Saru gets his big finale moment, putting his new ambassadorial skills to good use, successfully manoeuvring the Breen Primarch to Hull away from the scene of the battle and the progenitor's tech. All this feels like a bit of an afterthought. Tahal is only seen a couple of times through comms and doesn't factor at all in the final battle, which feels anticlimactic considering all the setup they did with Rayner's backstory earlier in the season. In one of the show's all-time most Discoveryist moments, Rayner and the Discovery get rid of the Breen once and for all, separating the saucer and expanding the spore field to jump the Dreadnought to the edge of the galactic barrier. It's an eye-popping moment for sure, but it's also pure brain-melting insanity that seemingly comes out of nothing more than Tilly, Stamets and Adira spitballing for a grand total of about 0.68 seconds. Science later, problem now. Now safely back aboard the Discovery, Burnham decides against using the progenitor's tech. Reasoning it to be too powerful to be left for others to find, the Discovery throws it into one of the black holes, much to the disappointment of Stamets, and probably anyone else clinging to the slim hopes of using it to bring back a dead pet or something. Arriving at the conclusion that the universe is already teeming with life, infinite diversity and infinite combinations is a gloriously Trekkian moment. Bravo, Discovery. This is truly great stuff. Not so great, however, is Burnham's remarkable assurance that throwing away the greatest scientific discovery of the time would be so easily accepted by her superiors. Sure, the progenitors gave her the ultimate power to make the call, but no one else knows that, and I find it hard to believe Burnham wouldn't face some sort of heat for her perceived self-righteous actions. Obviously, with this being Discovery, we get none of that. What we do get is the revelation that the mysterious Kovich is actually Daniels, the time-travelling temporal officer last seen way back in Enterprise's 4th season. It's a cute, winking moment that nicely connects Trek's first canonical moments to its new far future setting. I'm sure some fans will love this, but this did nothing for me whatsoever. We also learn that Mal has been recruited by Kovich and will work with him on Red Directive missions going forward. It's an unlikely fate for the character, considering her crimes of theft, multiple murders, and almost killing an entire town of people without showing any remorse. But then again, this is a show that can't remember what characters are supposed to be wearing from one episode to the next, so I assume they just forgot about all this. Anyway, Saru and Tarina finally get married, and Burnham and Book wrap things up by reconciling on a nice sunny beach. But wait, there's more! We then flash forward years into the future. Burnham and Book are old, but still look pretty damn good, and have an adult son, Leto, himself a newly minted captain, who arrives to take the now Admiral Burnham on one final mission. That final mission, quite incredibly, involves the Discovery reverting to its 23rd century form, finally reattaching those nacelles and closing that goddamn shuttle bay door. This is all to close the loop and finally tie into the events as seen in the Short Trek's episode Calypso. It's a moment that will undoubtedly delight the 5 people who actually watched Calypso, but it's a very strange note to end the show on. Firstly, intentionally stranding the ship's sentient AI for over 1,000 years is a very cruel act for a show that, at the exact same time, is shamelessly overindulging in some sort of imaginary hugs and tears orgy on the bridge. Secondly, the events seen in Calypso suggest some sort of dystopian future where war rages and the Federation is seemingly nowhere to be found. Not quite the hopeful ending I imagine the show was aiming for, but obviously leave it to Discovery to botch its final moments. Let's fly! Life itself is so unapologetic in sticking to the Discovery formula, it's almost admirable. It's an epic and exhausting 90-minute sprint to the finish, loaded with action, spectacle, insanity, high-stakes drama, and of course, emotion and nonsense. It's far from perfect, but I think it just about sticks the landing. Sure, what lands is on fire, missing one of its nacelles, and hardly anyone survived to tell the tale, but fuck it, a landing is still a landing. For longtime fans of the show, it's hard not seeing this as anything other than a complete success. Credit where it's due, Michelle Paradise and her team have worked wonders here, spinning optics more impressively than this season's mental spore jump. Rather than a victim of unceremonious cancellation, life itself instead feels like a conclusive final flourish, a grand celebration for the show that supposedly kick-started Trek's new golden age. Despite all the nonsense and unintentionally funny moments, I did find myself mostly entertained and even occasionally swept up in the sentimentality of it all. It was a nice euphoria, kinda like the feeling you get when crossing the finishing line of a marathon. We had to go through a lot of shit to get here, but we did it! We survived! Go us! I'm giving life itself a 6 out of 10. It's a strong 6, closer to a 7 than a 5. With the show now finished, the conversation inevitably switches to legacy. What is my overall opinion on Discovery? It's a hard question to answer. The show we're saying goodbye to is very different to the one that first aired 7 years ago, and that itself was a huge departure from the first 2 episodes produced under Brian Fuller. Remember that guy? I think the show found its footing and identity from the 3rd season onwards, but was never able to be anything more than a safe approximation of half-baked stuff that we've seen before. For me, Star Trek has always been about exploration, both of outer space and the inner space that makes us who we are. Discovery never managed to find the right balance, more interested in making us feel with blunt force trauma than encouraging us to think to inspire true emotional realization. It's a show that I have never been interested in revisiting, a sharp contrast with other Trek shows that are still in constant rotation despite being nearly 60 years old. I don't hate Discovery. It's frustrating, sure, a load of wasted potential, a show that can be very, very silly. It's definitely not my kind of Trek, despite my efforts to try and enjoy it. But it is, and will always be, a Star Trek show. And if over the course of its run it helped create new fans, even if it was just those weirdos who watched Calypso, that for me makes Discovery a success. But what did you think of this episode and Discovery as a whole? Let me know in the comments section below. Discovery might be over, but for me the adventure to review every episode of Star Trek is just beginning, so if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel for more reviews like this coming soon. Until next time, I'm the Trek Lad, live long and prosper.